What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the Preacher Girl podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Arner, and I am so excited that you decided to hop on for a listen. I hope you feel encouraged and inspired after listening to this podcast. Feel free to go follow me on Instagram at Preacher Girl Podcast and also like the Preacher Girl Facebook page. Both will keep you up to date on the latest episodes and future plans for this podcast. So join the community. We would love to have you. So today on the show, I have Kevin Coleman. He is all the way from Walla Walla, Washington. I don't know if you're familiar with the area or not. I know some of you are from there. I have yet to visit. It looks like a really cool place to go. I gotta say, it looks very pretty out there. Anyways, this guy, super cool, great guy. He created an app. It is called Do Something Good. If you are a coder, if you are a tech person in any way, if you have an iPhone and Android, if you're just into apps, you're going to want to listen to this episode because it's very interesting to hear about how he came up with the idea, what the app is about, how you can benefit from it. And I will say right now, you can definitely benefit from it. I've been using it ever since I learned about it, actually, and it's definitely something you're going to want to check out. Anyways, stay tuned for this episode because it's really, really good. It's really interesting. Honestly, it's just really interesting. And I hope you enjoy it. All right, guys, here we go. Hey, you guys, welcome back to the Preacher Girl podcast. Today, I'm very excited to have Kevin Coleman on the show. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the listeners, Kevin reached out to me on Instagram and we both have a mutual friend, Caleb. So I thought that was pretty cool. And so yet again, another Instagram connection. So Kevin, I'm very, very excited that you're here. And I know that everyone is going to love what you have to say. So thanks for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you again.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So to get started, just tell us a little bit about, who you are, where you're from, about your family, things like that.
Sure. Yeah. I live in Walla Walla, Washington, which is in southeastern Washington state. So over on the west side. And I've lived here since I was in second grade. So it's like most of my memories.
Wow.
Yeah. Small town. It's good times. Everything's pretty laid back here. We have a wonderful community here with Walla University, and Adventism is not foreign in this town. It's wonderful.
Yeah, so I've heard.
Yeah. So it's
That's
in
awesome.
fact it's easy to feel like it's a little bit of an Adventist Mecca, which is kind of a fun feeling. But yeah, so I've been here for years now, and went through Walla Walla University and. Graduated in 2009 and have been just living here locally, working some locally here and some remote. And I'm here with my family, Mindy, my wife, and my 1-year-old daughter, Nora, now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so you've been there like most of your life then. That's really cool. That's really cool. If you don't mind me asking, what did you study at Walla Walla?
So I studied new media imaging, which is actually not a degree that is offered by name anymore.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
it kind of sprung out of graphic design, like print web design.
Yeah.
We added in a little bit more of like animation and web stuff into it, and then it became web design. So that's the degree that is most recent.
Okay, so it's like they still have the degree, but they just kind of like renamed it, sort of thing.
Yeah. So actually, right now the web design degree is kind of under construction. So they have it, but it's not the same as new media imaging. It was a few years back. So
sure. Okay, awesome. And I know we were like briefly talking before this. You used to work, I think you said, in like the corporate world. Is that kind of right? Or
so after I graduated, actually, I should back up. Before I graduated, I got employed at Baker Boyer Bank, which is a local bank here. In their marketing department, doing some marketing stuff, some advertising stuff, and primarily their web presence and building a website for them. So that was my first job. I actually got that before I was graduated. I had to talk them into giving me the hours since I had classes going at the same time. Um, and
Mm.
then, yeah, so I worked there for 4 years, and then I kind of worked my way through various different agencies from HTML email development to app development to kind of
Wow.
distributed larger projects on the web.
Wow. Wow. Okay, cool. So you're definitely a tech person then.
Yeah, yep, through and through. They got me branded.
Gotcha. Yeah. That's great. I have quite a few friends who are into like very, whether it's computer science or, just tech in general. I'm not so much into all those things, but I always appreciate people like you who are, to help us kind of better understand how all that works. So that's great. But yeah, I know the main reason, that you're here today is to tell us about this app that you have created. I downloaded it. I've had it for, I think, maybe a week or two now. I love it. It's so cool. So how about you kind of give us some background of like how that started and how you came up with the idea and, what it is and things like
Sure,
that.
yeah. I mean, that's a lot of questions. First,
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Just start wherever you
that's
want.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. First, I got to say I'm glad that you have tried it out and are liking it. That's my main goal with the app is
Hmm.
just that people enjoy it and that it enriches people's lives. So the app
Hmm.
is called Something Good, and it has a longer inspiration story, which I'll get to in a second. But the core of it
Yeah.
is just that it gives you one good thing to do, just kind of a random good thing to do each day, and you can
Hmm.
check it off. It's a one item checklist. It's dead simple.
Mm.
And so then that'll cycle out, the next day for something else, and just kind of remind you to do a new good thing each day. And if you get something that you
Hmm.
can't do, like say, my classic example is watch a sunrise, because I never am up to watch a sunrise. Then you can shake your device or you can tap a button to get a new thing. So it's really low pressure.
Cool.
It's not like it's going to chastise you for not getting it done or anything like that.
Right. Right. Yeah. Very, very cool. Okay, so that's kind of what it is. Yeah, because I just opened it up yesterday. And if I'm being honest, I don't remember what it was. But I remember it was something I was like, oh, I don't know if I could do that today. So I did like do another one and it's like super easy, super simple. And it makes you feel good about like doing something that you wouldn't normally do, and a good thing, So I think it's very cool. Yeah. So when did you come up with the
Yeah,
idea?
so just on a timeline, I came up with the idea kind of in the end of 2018 and worked on building the first revision of the app for a few months and released it just at the end of January 2019. And for
Okay.
me, the inspiration or the idea kind of came from a turn of events in my career. I had mentioned
Mm.
I've worked in various different jobs, in the tech
Mhm.
industry, and the last few bigger contracts that I've taken have been kind of increasing scope and stress, and they kind of come hand in hand with like effect, right? Like it's really
Mm.
cool. I got to work on a team that was doing Google projects and working all over the world, and WordPress core and stuff. But at the same time, like that
Mm.
was high stress. I had to be uh, I don't know. I was just accountable for some pretty big projects, and it was stuff that
Yeah.
I hadn't done before, and I was learning on the fly, and trying my
Mm.
best. And I mean, every job there's some learning, and so that was fine. But
Mhm.
if you look back at the last couple of jobs, there were a lot of external stresses on me, and in the agency world in particular, there's a high pressure to turn out jobs in a low amount of clocked hours. You're really just trying
Mm.
to grind through work and keep the costs low so
Mm.
that you can make money for the agency, and it ends up making people feel a lot like a number. Um, which over time, you can take it for a little while, but over time it really gets to you. And I
Sure,
think I had
yeah.
just reached that point where it was just too much, and I had to just step away for a little while. And so at the
Mhm.
end of one contract, I just kind of stepped back and went, oh man, I'm feeling really burnt out and just feeling like I needed to
Mhm.
do something good in the world. And so I sat and thought, well, I want to do something good when I call it something good, and I help other people do something good. Um,
Hmm.
and so that's kind of where it came from, is just this desire to do something that's a little bit more than like, making money for an agency somewhere.
Yeah. Wow, that is super cool. And I have quite a few listeners who have just started in the work world, or maybe they've been in there like a few years now, and I think they could definitely relate to what you're saying to, you kind of get caught up in the grind of things and you get so busy and you feel like maybe even you're being overworked. And so I think the fact that you have created something like this for those of us who feel like we don't have time maybe to do something good or whatever it may be, I think it's awesome that you've created this because it gives us almost an outlet to almost remind us that we still can like do these little things that are good things. So that's really cool. That's a great backstory you have there.
Well, thanks. Thanks for letting me share it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess, another question I have for you for this app is kind of like, what is the goal? Obviously, it make people want to do something good, but is there kind of like a wider goal? And also, are there, is there a specific audience, age wise, that maybe this app is for, or is this app for everyone? So
Yeah. So the goal really is just to get more people doing good things. Kind of, you can probably tell from the backstory is it's kind of an altruistically driven thing. It's kind of interesting. Like I'll talk to people and be like, hey, I made this app. You should check it out. And it's free. And a lot of times if it's online or something, I'll just get no response, just crickets. And people are like, oh yeah, free thing, right? Like what's the catch?
Right.
Like, they don't say it, but I can hear
Right.
it. And
Yeah. Right.
it's really weird because it's kind of just, it's so out there to even run into anything that is driven by altruistic means now that is absolutely free and just out there to help you out,
Yeah.
that people are skeptical, which I didn't expect, which maybe I should have. I don't know. Maybe that's naivety. But,
Sure. Right. I hear you. Yeah.
but yeah, so that really is just the goal, is to help people experience life a little bit better. And actually, as an aside to that, one of the cool things that I noticed when sort of putting together this app and beta testing it is that it is, because it's dead simple and it has this really low barrier to entry, like just a very simple thing to do each day, and you don't even have to do it. It's not like it's counting your points or anything.
Right.
It appeals to people who are maybe in a depressed state or struggling with stuff, who maybe don't see their own value, or struggling with self-worth, because I've seen people saying things like, in a depressed state, you may struggle with just getting up and getting showered and getting out the door. And
Right.
at the end of the day, you might be laying in bed going, why am I even here? I'm not worth anything. I didn't do anything that anybody valued today. And this app, while it is, very small and very, very simple to achieve, that one thing might be the thing that when you're laying in bed, you say, well, I didn't do anything to, oh, you know what? I did. I gave somebody a compliment. Like, there's one thing I did today. I guess I can't say that anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
So
That's really cool. That makes a lot of sense.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it's, I'm no social scientist or anything like that, but just in an attempt to improve people's lives, I realized that was kind of an angle that could help people who are a little bit down and out. And then you also asked if it's targeting anyone in particular, and it's really targeting anybody, anyone and everyone, because I want to help everybody.
Yeah.
And
That's
um,
awesome.
yeah, it's. I think the only place I'm really largely failing that right now is that it's not translated into other languages yet. It's just
Oh,
English, so I got to
okay.
work on some others, but
Sure.
that's new to me. So
Oh, yeah. One thing at a time,
yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome, though. The fact that you're already thinking about that, that's great. That says a lot that, like, you really want this to be accessible to more and more people. So that's awesome. That's really great. And I like how you pointed out that this app is, for people who don't always feel that great, and it could be that little something when they open up the app and they see, hey, I can do this today. And that might make them feel, just that much better. So I think that's awesome. So another question I have for you, has to do with faith. I wanted to ask you kind of, how does, faith play into all of this for you, along the terms of, do you think this app is something that maybe God wanted you to do? How does faith play a role in all of
Yeah,
this?
that's a really interesting question for me, because I think I think the thing that drove it for me was largely my own mental state, kind of in relation to my
Hmm.
career, right? So it wasn't something that
Sure.
like I was sitting in church and the idea hit me or
Yeah.
something like that.
Right. Sure. Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But I would say that religion did play a part in sort of the career eye-opening experience for me. The
Mm.
actually the last two places that I'd worked that were those kind of higher stress places,
Hmm.
there were aspects of those places that were religious. So
Mm.
uh, like some of the people in the leadership positions were particularly religious and were very open about that in the company, which is great. Um,
Hmm.
but it became kind of a sour point for me because like some of the stress and some of the things that I was going through
Hmm.
were directly contrasted against like this overly optimistic hope. This sounds really mean. This is it sounds awful, but
No. No.
but
No.
it really is sort of the thing that prodded me is that you know people in leadership positions showing an open faith in God and then like kind of forgetting about the employees underneath them in some ways. Um,
Mm.
that
Hmm.
to me, a lot of people would look at that and say, "Oh yeah, you're Christian and look at how you lead and this is terrible." But that's not really it. To
Mm.
me, it was kind of a wake up call that like you can be Christian, but you can still like some of the onus still lands on you to carry the
Hmm.
load um, and do what
Hmm.
God would have you do. It's not you can't just throw your hands in the air and say, "Hey, God will take care of all of this." You still have to play an active
Hmm.
role in being the leader that God wants you to be.
Sure. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that translated for me because yeah, I could have been soured by the experience and just like walked away from everything, being like, oh yeah, Christians terrible people. But instead,
Mm.
I think I was inspired by that to try and take up the leadership that maybe God was laying on me by making this
Hmm.
app, by picking myself up by my own bootstraps and saying, okay, I'm going to do this because I know that God has given me skills, He's given me abilities, He's given me the
Mm.
opportunity. And so it
Yeah.
kind of motivated me. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I always dance around that because I don't want to sound like I'm saying that these people were bad people. They were definitely trying and doing their best, and God is
Sure.
blessing
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
well. But it was just
Sure.
kind of an interesting backward way that you don't think about being inspired, I think.
Right, right. Well, yeah, and all of that's great. What stood out to me is how you said, you didn't come up with this idea while you're sitting in church. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And I think that that's so great because I think some people think that, for whether you're a Christian or an Adventist or whatever, you don't have to be in church. You don't have to be in an Adventist school. You don't have to be in a religious institution to come up with some idea like this. You can be in the workforce, you can be wherever. And so I think that's great. And the fact that, you're so positive about, the different situations that you found yourself in, I think that says a lot about you and who you are as a person, because it's so easy to be negative and be like, there wasn't an app like this, or whatever it might have been. And so I think that's great. I think that makes a lot of sense. And especially for a lot of my listeners who are in college, sometimes they get tired of, maybe the rules of different things or whatever it may be, or they might not like something. But here, we see someone like you who created something that they didn't see and that they couldn't find, and so maybe sometimes we just need to stop and think for ourselves, well, what can I do, whether that's to better myself or to think of something that could better humanity, like this app. I really think it is something that is, bettering humanity. So I think that's great, your perspective on all of that. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So another question I have for you is, for someone who might want to create an app for, themselves, they might want to do that. What would you say to them if maybe they're uncertain of what that might look like, or how they might do that? What would you say to someone like that?
Yeah. Oh man, that's a good question. So I think. Hmm. So if you get into app development and you get looking around online, there are probably going to be a lot of resources that will tell you like, hey, you can do this. It's pretty easy. You just jump in, use this framework or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
they're not completely wrong. There are some ways to make it easier. But I think on a whole, I don't want to dissuade people, but I do want to tell them like, don't expect it to
Mm-hmm.
be super easy because you do have to learn some
Right.
code, and you do have to
Mm-hmm.
struggle through some bugs, and you do have to test with a lot of people. If you're gonna do your due diligence, it's going to be some work, and that doesn't mean there aren't great resources out there, but you just need to know like there's going to be some time spent on it, and you're going to have to learn quite a bit. Unless you already know a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of code and everything, that's great. Go for it.
Right.
And along with that, I think it's probably really important for people to understand that when you make an app, or really anything that users interface with, you want to start by validating your assumptions about what they will find valuable. And you can do that well before
Mm-hmm.
you write any lines of code. You can ask people if they think it would be a good idea, if they would use it. You can prototype it up and be like, hey, does this look cool to you? And you need to make sure and validate your assumptions with something more than just your own brain before you go and build something. Because I've seen it happen. People will build a thing they think is cool, spend a lot of time, maybe even money on it, and then they roll it out, release it to the world, and people are like, yeah, no, I don't need that. And then they get really
Yeah.
discouraged because they put a lot of work and money into this, and then it just flops, right? Because they didn't go through the user testing or the validation in the beginning. So talking to people, developing a group of beta testers, and a close core that can help validate your assumptions before you write code. That's probably the number one mistake I see people make. And it's not that hard. You just need to
Mm.
spend a little time talking to people about it.
That makes a lot of sense. So for someone like me, right, like I don't know how to code and things like that. So obviously that is involved. And then also, like you were saying, talking to other people and getting, people to test it out. So is that something that you did, with this app? Did you have people test it out, before you launched it then?
Yeah, I did. So I was a little bit light on the just asking general questions before
Mm,
doing anything at all. Partly because I have written some code before, and so I wanted to. I knew that I wanted to jump in and learn the coding framework, regardless of if the app was successful. So for me, it was a slightly different case, but I would highly recommend don't do that if you care about the success of the app and its follow up. But immediately after making a first revision, I put together a group of beta testers just straight up by asking my friends, which they did me a solid. Thank you, friends. A lot of them were probably like, yeah, I don't really need another app on my phone, or I don't need to spend the time giving feedback, but they did, and I think it was 70 or 80 people by the end that were testing
wow.
the app. And, some of the people just had it on their phone and they maybe used it. And some of the people were like, every time a new release came out, they pushed every button and they flipped the phone upside down and they banged it on the table and they told me if it worked.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
yeah, but that was
yeah.
very valuable.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. So it wasn't like, you just, asked five people, you asked several different people and several different types of people. So that makes a lot of sense. Okay, good to know. Well, I mean, that'll be really helpful for some people listening because I do know some people who have talked about, creating apps, but maybe they didn't know exactly how to do that or what that looked like. So I think what you've shared here will be really helpful. So that's great. So I have another question for you, and that is, um, some of my listeners, they're in a transitioning stage. So, maybe they've just graduated college and they're starting a new job. Maybe they just got married, or maybe this will be their first year of college, whatever it is. A lot of people are transitioning right now. And I wanted to ask you, what advice do you have for them in this time in their life? And what encouragement do you have for them as well?
Yeah, so that's. I was thinking of it. This idea kind of in the realm of the job market initially when I thought about this
Mm,
question,
hmm.
and I think in relation to the job market, it's a very shifting environment that we haven't seen before. From industrial revolution on, it was like you get a job and you could probably be there for most of your life, or like maybe two jobs or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the source and I needed to look it up, but
That's all right.
someone was telling me recently that the average employee entering the workforce today will get fired or let go in the area of 6 times throughout their career, and that's not even counting like
Wow.
leaving of your own free will. So,
Oh,
so it's
wow.
totally a different landscape. And
Yeah.
so, someone going into the workforce now, I would say like you need to learn early on not to take it personally, um, and
Mm.
that when you go to a company, they're contracting you for work, but if you put it in the mind frame of that you're contracting them for the ability to learn something, you're going to be much more fulfilled than if you're just like trying to make a check off of it. Because
Mm.
then when you come out the other side of that job, you'll have learned something and you can apply it to the next one, or something in your own life.
Mm-hmm.
As far as transitioning through other phases, I
Mm.
think my takeaway from this app is that you need to trust God whenever you're going through a transition. And for me, this app has been kind of a different angle or a new way to learn to trust God, because in the past it felt very much like trusting God was like, okay, I got to let go of this wheel and let Him steer. But
Mm.
in a weird way, I think this app has taught me that sometimes trusting God is trusting that He wants you to steer,
Mm.
right? That you have to grab the wheel because He's put that wheel in front of you, and even if you don't know where you're going, you need to do the best you can and do something that
Mm-hmm.
will be a good thing in the end.
Yeah. Wow. That, if I'm being honest, I've never heard that before. And it took me a second to kind of like think about it. I think you make a really good point because a lot of us are told, let go and let God. And I do agree with that. And I think that's definitely good. But I think you bring a good point about how it's one thing to let go and let God. And it's another thing to still recognize that there's still more likely than not work for you to do as well. It's not like you're just going to sit there and do nothing. So I think you bring a really good point to yes, trust God, but to also ask Him what it is that you need to do, and follow through with actions with your prayers as well. So thank you for bringing that
Yeah,
up.
yeah, certainly. And actually, earlier you mentioned that you said you were like impressed with how positive I was, and
Right.
it's kind of funny to me because like actually the thing that I really struggled with through this is remaining positive.
Mm,
So I wanted to loop that back in because I think that's a
sure.
part
Yeah.
of this whole like grabbing the wheel and going is that you just have to like
Mm,
make yourself see the good in things and be positive and
mm,
never talk bad to yourself. Like if you catch yourself
mm.
saying something bad, like that is the problem. You need to stop it.
Yeah. Yeah, right, right. That's funny you bring that up. I was actually just talking about this with my mom actually yesterday, and I was telling her like, man, like, I feel like at one point I'm being so positive, and then I feel like at the next, point, I feel like I'm like, bringing myself down, or like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's so you go back and forth, and it's almost like your mind is like at war, and kind of the Bible kind of talks about that too. You're kind of at war with yourself
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. And so I think you bring up a good point about, being positive. It's something powerful, really. It can change everything for you just by deciding to be positive or do something good. So yeah, I don't know if you want to expand on anything else because yeah, you bring up some good points here about that.
Yeah, no, I mean that's mainly it. It's the main thing that I
Mm-hmm.
struggled with, and I still do. Like it's not something that goes away overnight. It's something that we rewire our brains every time we do something, and
Mm,
if you talk negatively to yourself, you're teaching yourself that that's a pattern that you can repeat, and it's very hard
mm,
to get out of that. There are weird, probably more technical ways to explain this, but like when you say something bad, especially if you say that bad thing about yourself to somebody that you love, they're going to turn around and try to tell you no, that's not true, and they'll
mm-hmm,
probably lift you up and compliment you and try to make you feel like a better person, which
mm-hmm,
is a form of validation, right? Like they're giving you praise effectively when you say something bad about yourself,
mm-hmm.
which
Wow.
yeah is a kind of bad dependency.
Wow. Sure, sure.
So teaching yourself in very small ways and in baby steps, maybe to say good things about yourself, to teach yourself that you're doing good things, to recognize the good things around you. That's, you
Mm-hmm.
know, these tiny little baby steps are ways that you can start digging out of the hole that you've made. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think, you know, when people are in a down and out or depressed state, they don't realize that it is a multitude of little things that get you out. It's no big thing. It's not somebody knocking on your door and saying, "Hey, I'm going to change your life today." It's that you
Mm-hmm.
need to engage in a bunch of small things that are healthy, that are good, that in the long term will serve you well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And I think a lot of people do struggle with whether that's depression or negative self talk. I know I've definitely struggled with that. I think most people do. And I think you're absolutely right about, making those baby steps, those small changes for yourself, being kind to yourself, the words that you not only speak to others, but speak to yourself. And so I think there's a lot to take away from that. So thank you for sharing that as well. Yeah.
Well, and that's actually, as an aside, that's one of the things that was unexpected to me about this app that was kind of neat is like occasionally I'll open up the app and I'll get a thing to do that I've already done for the day. Like, you know, maybe I needed to
Mm,
give a compliment and I just did it like a half an hour ago. Um,
mm-hmm.
so, you know, I mean, it's like, as far as the challenge of the app, like there's no challenge anymore. I just check off the item because I already did it.
Yeah.
But what's cool about that is that it makes me recognize that I did that thing and that I did it naturally. And
Mm-hmm.
as somebody who's struggling to always recognize the positive stuff in life, like that is as much value as if I got a new thing and I went and did it. It's just recognizing that I already do good things.
Mm. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. I love it. That's great. Kevin, thank you so, so much for telling us all about this app. I think it's super, super cool. Before I let you go, where can we find you on social media? Because I know a lot of people are on there. So,
Sure. Yeah. Probably the easiest place right now to find me is on Instagram. My handle is Kevin Coleman IO, which is similar to my kevincoleman.io website. And then there's also somethinggood.app on Instagram if you want to follow the app account.
awesome. Awesome, awesome, for sure. And I'll be sure to share that on my Instagram as well so people can find it. Yeah, Kevin, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Your app is super cool. For those who are listening, definitely go download the app. Super easy. It takes like 5 seconds or less, maybe. So definitely go get the app. Kevin, thank you so much. I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you. I want to express an especially big thank you. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of people will resist marketing something that is free and they don't know why. But you've made a good step in helping people realize that there's something good out there for them that's totally free and, you know, no strings attached. So I
Yeah,
appreciate the time you spent.
absolutely. Oh, yeah. No, for sure. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, Kevin, have a great rest of your day. Enjoy the state of Washington. I still need to visit one
Yeah,
day.
well, you know, let me know if you're in the area. Walla Walla is a great place.
I know, right? More and more people are like moving out there or to Oregon. So it seems like the place to be.
Yeah, yep. Good camp meetings out here, too. So.
I hear. All right, Kevin.
All
Thank
right.
you. Have a good day.
Yep,
All
thank you.
right.
Bye.
Bye. Hey, you guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to check out the app that Kevin has created, and you'll definitely want to look into that. It's really fun to use. I really enjoy using the app myself. So also, if you can, I would really appreciate it if you wrote a review for me on iTunes. Even if you don't use iTunes, you can still go online and write a review on there, and that would help a lot. That would really be a huge help to me. And if you could rate the channel, that would be awesome too. All right, guys, thank you for listening. I hope you have a great rest of your week. And until next time, bye.